I've been a cemetery director for 11 years, and I've never seen a grave appear between closing and sunrise until last November. My name's Marcus Webb. I'm the operations director at Riverside Memorial Gardens in St. Louis, Missouri. I've worked in cemetery management for 11 years now, the last 4 in this position. I've handled everything from flooded crypts to vandalism to families showing up at midnight demanding to see their loved ones. But what happened on November 3rd, 2023, still keeps me up at night. People think working at a cemetery is morbid, but it's honestly just landscaping and logistics. We maintain 140 acres of grounds. We schedule burials, coordinate with funeral homes, keep records, handle the business side. Most days I'm in my office reviewing permits or driving around checking sprinkler systems. The dead stay buried. That's the whole point. I live about 15 minutes from the cemetery in Maplewood. I've been with my partner Jasmine for 6 years. She's a pharmacist. Normal life, normal job. I mention this because I want you to understand, I'm not someone who believes in ghost stories or supernatural nonsense. I deal with death as a practical matter, a logistical reality. Bodies go in the ground, families grieve, grass grows. That's it. That night started like any other closing shift. It was a Thursday, unseasonably warm for November in Missouri, around 68 degrees, humid, with fog rolling in from the Mississippi River. The cemetery closes at 5:30 p.m., but I usually stay until 6 or 6:30, doing a final drive-through to make sure no visitors are still inside and the gates are secured. I was in my truck, a white Ford F-250 with the cemetery logo on the door, driving the perimeter road. The sun had set around 5:15, and the fog was getting thick, that heavy kind that sits low and makes everything look like it's underwater. I had my high beams on, moving slowly past the older sections near the eastern fence line. That's when I saw the fresh mound. I stopped the truck. Section F is one of our oldest areas, dating back to the 1940s. Nobody's been buried there in over 20 years. The plots are all full, the stones weathered and covered in lichen. We barely even maintain it beyond basic mowing. But there, about 30 feet from the road, was a pile of fresh dirt. Dark, wet earth, maybe 3 feet high, shaped like a burial mound. My first thought was vandals. We'd had problems 6 months earlier with teenagers digging shallow holes as some kind of stupid prank. I grabbed my flashlight and walked over, boots crunching on the gravel path. The mound was positioned between 2 old headstones, Margaret Schultz, 1891 to 1947, and Robert Chen, 1923 to 1989. The dirt looked freshly turned, still clumped together, not settled. I could see the individual shovel marks in the soil. I called my assistant groundskeeper, a guy named Riley who'd worked there for 3 years. Good kid, reliable. He answered on the second ring. "Riley, you do any digging in Section F today?" "Section F?" "No, sir. We haven't touched that area in months." "Why?" "There's a fresh mound here. Looks like someone dug something up or buried something." Pause. "You want me to come back?" "No, I'll handle it. Just wanted to confirm it wasn't us." I hung up and stood there, shining my flashlight over the mound. The fog was thick enough now that I could barely see the road behind me. The cemetery was completely silent, except for the occasional car passing on Gravois Avenue, half a mile away. I should have called the police right then. That's protocol. But I wanted to see what I was dealing with first. If it was just some animal someone buried, or trash, or whatever, I didn't want squad cars showing up for nothing. I walked back to my truck and grabbed a shovel from the bed. The dirt was loose, easy to move. I started at the top of the mound, working carefully, expecting to hit something within a foot or two. The smell hit me almost immediately. That unmistakable sour-sweet stench of decomposition. Not overwhelming, but definitely there. 3 shovelfuls in, I saw fabric. Dark cloth, looked like polyester. I stopped digging with the shovel and crouched down, using my hands to brush away the dirt. It was a suit jacket, charcoal gray. My heart was pounding now. I kept clearing the soil, moving faster, until I could see the full shape. It was a body, face down, arms at its sides, buried maybe 18 inches deep. I stood up, backed away, and called 911. The police arrived within 12 minutes. 2 patrol officers from the St. Louis County PD. I met them at the main gate and led them back to Section F. By then, my hands were shaking. One of the officers, a woman named Alvarez, shone her flashlight down into the hole I'd dug. "Jesus," she said quietly. The other officer, an older guy named Kowalski, called it in. Within 30 minutes, we had detectives, a forensics team, and portable floodlights set up around the site. They made me wait by my truck while they worked. I watched them carefully excavate the body. It took almost 2 hours. They photographed everything, bagged the soil, set up a perimeter. Around 9 p.m., one of the detectives, a thin guy in his 50s named Brennan, came over to me. "You're the director here." "Operations director, yeah. Marcus Webb. How long have you worked here?" 11 years total, 4 in this position." He nodded, writing in a small notebook. "Any burials scheduled for this area?" "No. Section F is full. Has been for decades." "Who has access to the grounds after hours?" "Just me and the groundskeeping staff. We lock the gates at 5:30. "Could someone get in from outside?" "I mean, yeah, if they climb the fence." "It's not Fort Knox." He looked back toward the excavation site. The forensics team was lifting the body onto a tarp, moving with careful precision. "Here's the thing, Mr. Webb," Brennan said. "That body is fresh. I mean very fresh. Preliminary assessment says he's been dead less than 6 hours, probably closer to 3 or 4. I stared at him. "What?" "We'll know more after the autopsy, but the medical examiner thinks he died this afternoon. Maybe early evening." "That's impossible." "Why's that?" "Because I drove through here at 3 p.m. doing my afternoon check. There was nothing here. No mound, no disturbance, nothing. I do that route every day." Brennan wrote something down. "You're certain?" "Completely certain." He tapped his pen against the notebook. "So someone dug a grave, buried a fresh body, and covered it back up, all between 3 p.m. and 6 p.m. today, in a public cemetery, without anyone noticing." "I guess so. That's a lot of work. Digging a hole that size takes at least an hour, probably more. You'd need a truck to transport the body, equipment to move it, in broad daylight." I didn't have an answer. "Any security cameras?" he asked. "Just at the main entrance and the office." "Not back here?" He nodded slowly. "We're going to need to see your burial records. Anyone interred in the last 6 months, anyone scheduled, work orders, everything." "Of course." They kept me there until almost midnight, asking questions, taking my statement, walking me through the timeline again and again. The body was taken away in a medical examiner's van. The forensics team flagged the area with yellow tape and left portable lights set up. I drove home around 12:30 a.m. Jasmine was already asleep. I sat in the kitchen drinking water, trying to make sense of what I'd seen. The next morning, Detective Brennan called me at 7:45 a.m. "Mr. Webb, we've identified the body. I need you to check something for me." "Okay." His name was Daniel Hobart, age 71, retired electrician from Des Perez. "Does that name mean anything to you?" I pulled up our database on my computer. "Let me check our records." I typed in the name. Nothing. "No, I don't have anyone by that name in our system. Not buried here. No pre-need arrangements. Nothing. Can you check if he owned any plots? Maybe purchased years ago?" I ran a property search. "No, nothing." Brennan was quiet for a moment. "Here's the other thing. The autopsy's preliminary, but it looks like he died of natural causes. Probable cardiac arrest. No signs of trauma, no defensive wounds. He just died. So someone found a dead guy and decided to bury him in my cemetery? That's what it looks like. Why? That's what I'm trying to figure out." Over the next 3 days, the investigation expanded. Police interviewed the families and the plots surrounding the burial site. They reviewed footage from traffic cameras on Gravois Avenue. They contacted Daniel Hobart's family, a daughter in Chicago, a son in Kansas City, who confirmed he'd been living alone in a small house in Des Peres. He'd been found dead in his living room by a neighbor who had a key. The neighbor called 911, paramedics confirmed death, and the body was supposed to be transported to a funeral home. But somewhere between the house and the funeral home, Daniel Hobart disappeared. The ambulance crew claimed they delivered him to Schaefer Funeral Services on Manchester Road at 4:47 p.m. on November 3rd. They had paperwork, signatures, everything. But when the funeral home staff went to prepare the body at 6 p.m., he wasn't there. The intake room was empty. They assumed there was a miscommunication, that maybe the ambulance had gone to a different facility. They called the ambulance company, who insisted they delivered him. It took them until the next morning to realize he was actually missing. Nobody could explain how a body vanished from a secured funeral home and ended up buried 3 miles away in less than 90 minutes. On November 7th, I got a call from Brennan again. "Mr. Webb, I need to ask you something, and I want you to think carefully before you answer." "All right. Have you had any other incidents like this? Bodies appearing where they shouldn't be, unexplained disturbances, anything like that?" I almost said no, but something stopped me. "Maybe," I said. "I'd have to check." "Please do." I hung up and went into our archives. We keep physical records going back to 1947, when the cemetery opened. I started going through the director's logs, daily notes, incident reports, anything unusual. I found the first one in July 1998. The entry was written by the director at the time, a guy named Thomas Wharton. It was brief, almost dismissive. Reported fresh digging in Section D, no burial scheduled. Checked records, no discrepancy found. Filled in depression, reseeded grass, assumed animal activity. I found another one in March 2005. Different director, same basic note. Unexplained soil disturbance in Section F, no recent burials. No evidence of vandalism, regraded area. Then September 2011. Fresh mound discovered in Section F during closing inspection. No explanation. Police notified, no body found. Chalked up to pranksters. In April 2019, just 4 years ago, groundskeeper reported possible grave in Section F. Investigation revealed loose soil, but no burial. Restored area, 4 incidents, all in Section F, all unexplained. I called Brennan back and told him what I'd found. "Send me copies of those reports," he said. "All of them." The investigation continued for another week, but it went nowhere. The funeral home had no security footage of the intake room. The ambulance crew passed polygraphs. Daniel Hobart's family had alibis. There was no evidence of foul play, no motive, no suspects. The official conclusion was that someone, identity unknown, had stolen the body from the funeral home and buried it at Riverside Memorial Gardens for reasons unknown. The case went cold, but I couldn't let it go. I started driving through Section F every night before closing, sometimes twice. I brought a camera, a measuring tape, a notebook. I documented everything: soil conditions, weather, temperature, time of day. For 3 months, nothing happened. Then on February 18, 2024, I found another mound. It was in almost the exact same spot, between the Schultz and Chen headstones. Same size, same shape, same fresh dirt. I called 911 immediately. Police arrived, excavated carefully. There was no body this time, just loose soil piled into a mound, as if someone had dug a grave and filled it back in without putting anything inside. Forensics found no fingerprints, no footprints, no tool marks they could trace. The soil itself was consistent with the surrounding area, nothing foreign or unusual. It was just dirt, moved from one place to another. Detective Brennan came out personally. He stood there with me in the cold February drizzle, looking down at the empty hole. "I don't know what to tell you, Mr. Webb," he said. "There's nothing here, but someone dug it." "Yeah, someone did." "Why?" He didn't answer. I went back to the archives that night and found something I'd missed before. In the director's log from 1962, there was a note written by the original founder of the cemetery, a man named Howard Gaines. Section F, plots designated for expansion overflow. Reserved for emergency use only. Per agreement with city, conditional access maintained. I had no idea what that meant. I called the city planning office the next day and asked if they had any records related to Riverside Memorial Gardens from the 1960s. They found something. In 1961, the city of St. Louis had negotiated an agreement with several private cemeteries, including Riverside, to provide emergency burial capacity in case of mass casualty events, disasters, pandemics, things like that. Section F was designated as one of those overflow areas. The agreement expired in 1985 and was never renewed, but the conditional access clause was still technically in the property records. I don't know what that means. I don't know if it's connected, but I haven't been able to stop thinking about it. Here's what keeps me awake. Daniel Hobart was 71 years old. He died of natural causes in his home on a Thursday afternoon. His body was documented, transported, logged into a funeral home system. And then somehow, it ended up buried in a section of my cemetery that was reserved 40 years ago for mass casualties. And before him, there were 4 other incidents, all in the same section, all unexplained. I still work at Riverside Memorial Gardens. I still do my closing checks, still drive through Section F every evening. But I've started carrying a camera with me now, and I've installed a trail camera pointed at that specific area between the Schultz and Chen headstones. Last week, on October 3rd, I reviewed the footage from the night before. At 2:47 a.m., the camera captured something, just for a single frame. It's blurry, probably a glitch or a trick of the fog, but it looks like someone standing next to the Schultz headstone. The figure is there for one frame, and then it's gone. I showed it to Jasmine. She thinks it's just motion blur, a deer or something passing through. She's probably right, but I can't shake the feeling that Section F is waiting for something. That those 4 incidents over the past 26 years weren't random. That Daniel Hobart was placed there for a reason. I called Detective Brennan last month to ask if there were any updates on the case. He told me it's still officially open, but there's nothing new. No leads, no evidence, no answers. Sometimes, he said, things just don't make sense. I've been thinking about that a lot lately, about how we build systems and structures and rules because we need the world to make sense. We need death to be orderly, predictable, something we can manage and schedule and keep contained in neat rows of headstones. But every now and then, something slips through, something that doesn't follow the rules. I don't know what's in Section F. I don't know why Daniel Hobart was buried there, or who moved him, or what those empty mounds mean. But I know this. Every time I drive past that section now, I feel like something is watching me. Not something supernatural or paranormal. Nothing like that. Just the weight of an answer I'm not supposed to find. Sometimes when I'm locking the gates at night and the fog rolls in from the river, I think about those conditional access agreements, about emergency capacity, about what the city thought they might need 40 years ago. And I wonder if Section F is still waiting. I still work the closing shift. I still check the grounds every evening, but I don't walk through Section F alone anymore. And if you've ever seen something in a cemetery that didn't belong, something that made you stop and question what you were looking at, I'd suggest you don't look too close. Some things are meant to stay buried, even if they refuse to stay down.